Okay, so good morning. Well, good morning. I don't know when you're going to be seeing this. So, hello from the Caribbean HRD TV. And we are speaking with Alvin Day, a management consultant. And I'm asking Mr. Day today to tell me about the global talent shortage. Now, I've read two articles recently, and in one, Michael Franzio and Alan Guarino, they quote what they describe as an extensive multi-country Korn Ferry report that finds that by 2030, more than 85 million jobs could go unfilled because there aren't enough skilled people to fill them. And then the article goes on to debunk the myth that robots will take our job, but rather it says that there will be a global human talent shortage and that the number of people, 85 million, is roughly equivalent to the population of Germany. And that if it is left unchecked, that talent shortage could result in approximately $8.5 trillion US dollars in unrealized annual revenues. And in another article, Calvin Coffey points out that that figure of $8.5 trillion is more than the annual GDP of Germany and the UK combined. So my question for you today, Mr. Days, do you anticipate that a global talent shortage is on the horizon? And what must organizations do to attract and retain the very best talent that there is out there?
Yes, a very heavy question or set of questions indeed, partly because of the complexity of it and the reality of it, and partly because of the multifaceted nature of it. I'm in total agreement that there is going to be a major talent shortage, but further, I believe today there is a major talent shortage. It's just going to accelerate if we don't do what needs to be done. Before the pandemic, America's unemployment rate was somewhere in the vicinity of 3%, 2 to 3%. Jamaica, that had an unemployment rate in the 20s and 30s decades ago, had an unemployment rate in the vicinity of 5 to 7%, within 3 points striking distance of the United States. It was phenomenal. And then, of course, the pandemic hit. I remember this because I was working with the Bank of Jamaica and we were gloating about the idea that things were going so well and then the pandemic hit. The point, though, is that while we're slowly working our way back up to getting greater employment numbers, the economy is full, or I shouldn't say the economy is full, but the job slate is full, and there is a need for more people. People are finding jobs. It's easy for people to find jobs, relatively speaking. Now, that sets up an interesting scenario. There was a time when the job was our salvation. Today, it is not. I contend, Alvin, that the principal source of trouble that we face in the talent war is that the word job has not been redefined since the start of the industrial age. It has not been redefined. We still hold jobs the way we hold universities and schools and the way we teach in traditional ways. And the job has to be redefined in order for this not to be an incredible crisis. Perhaps the solution to this recruiting problem is going to require the crisis to get people's attention. But here's the deal. After the Great Depression, families were so scared of returning to the place where they needed thousands of dollars to buy a loaf of bread, where they didn't want to starve, they didn't want to be unable to provide food, shelter, and clothing for the family, that they got jobs that they regarded as their saviors. To get paid every single week was guaranteed that they would be able to find food. And so they dedicated their lives, or grandparents and great-grandparents, they dedicated their lives to the job 5 days a week, 40, 60 hours a week, because it gave them security. Because if they should lose the jobs, they might lose their dignity in society. Come 2023, 24, 27, 2030, that's not true anymore. We're in a world today where there's such globalization of industry There's such ability to reach and find employment beyond your own physical borders that people who are the ones to fill jobs do not perceive the jobs the way that our grandparents perceived them, as a way of saving them. There is this term called the Great Resignation, which is a phenomenon for those of us who were born before the internet, where people just literally are quitting in masses, as you well know. I have massive multinational companies that have security and insurance and benefits for people. And I am amazed to tell you that there are times when people who are working at the companies will just walk away from their jobs and stay home for a while with nothing to do. In my generation, you quit your job when you get another job, or quit your job when you're almost getting another job. People just go stay home. Listen, I can't take this anymore. And they know that within 6 months, when they ramp up again, they will find a job. So that's one of the issues. When we try to solve a problem, when we try to solve a problem, oftentimes we are trying to take an existing system and reinstate it to status quo. There's a whole philosophy about problem solving not being the domain of great people, because problem solving is to take an existing system that's working just fine. When something stops working, we try to re-engineer, fix it, and patch it so that it goes back to status quo to do what the system was designed to do. Well, great innovators do not do that. They hire people to fix the broken parts. Great innovators stop and look at the system and say, should we be fixing this system? And I contend that the job market is broken. It needs to be changed, not retrofit and fixed. One of the things that we do is staff engagement. And staff engagement, for our staff engagement course, we have 7 things that we called the GNIs of staff engagement, where people want to be there working. And they include things like meaningful work, a sense of openness, the idea that they have a voice, training and development, upward mobility, and dignity and respect from my boss, my manager. And back in 1930, those things were not important, because I just did it because my boss told me. So the point is that companies have to get to the point of realizing that the heart and soul of their business, the employees, will not stay with them unless they create an environment where they're getting these things, the generators of engagement. So that's one of the critical points. How do you respond to that? Do you see HR as being ready for that? Do you see industry as being ready for that? Making the change necessary to create a whole new culture so that people feel fulfilled, like meaningful work is there. Because if they don't, they're going to just walk away knowing that they can go somewhere else.
Well, the thing is, what I'm kind of hung up on is that in Jamaica, one of the things we have are these call center jobs. And so you find people training in things here at the University of the West Indies, say. And then when they go into the workforce, there is not a job for them in their area of training. No, I know, based on what you're saying, I can accept that perhaps we need to redefine job and redefine the workforce and redefine the workplace and all of that. But surely there is a need that if you've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on a university education or on any kind of training, that you can come out doing a job that calls for that training. And I understand that a lot of training is not just technical, theoretical that we learn. It involves the soft skills that you learned while learning that job. I can accept that. But surely there must be a place for what you actually learned on the curriculum. And
Yes.
those kinds of jobs, I'm not seeing as many of those as I believe we ought to see.
Those kinds, meaning when you say kinds, define the kinds.
So, all right, for instance, in one of my courses, I'm teaching social policy.
Yes.
And in this, that we would want students to go out there and become social policy planners, become social policy evaluators, do things that will help the vulnerable. But the jobs in helping the vulnerable aren't really there. Social workers, I trained as a social worker originally. The social workers, we need them, but who is going to pay them? Because of course, the demand for this talent has to be backed by money, somebody paying you. So people gravitate into these call center jobs, which don't call for you having the skills that you learned as a social worker, don't call for you having the skills that you learned as an HR person, but as I said, that there are soft skills. You understand how to negotiate, how to empathize, how to do these things. But by the same token, the theory that I learned, it's as if it's wasted. Because as I said, those particular jobs are not easily found.
Yes. So now that branches into a whole new subject or different subject that has to do, if you pardon my touching the subject, with the relevancy of academic education to the job market.
If
Because
that
the,
makes sense. Yes.
Mhm.
No, and I ask those questions as well. Yes.
Yes. The job market is the customer of the university, of the school. And if the job market is the customer, then it makes sense to study that job market and say, what does it want? And it operates on supply and demand. What the company's customers demand, they produce. What your customers demand, which is the jobs that help them make things and fix things and change things. So when a child graduates with a social services degree and can't find a job and has to get a job at a lower socioeconomic level, such as in a call center where they don't pay very well, despite the educational system has not prepared that child to fit the demand of the customer called the corporation.
Mhm.
So philosophically, we should be catering to our customers. And when we cater to what ought to be in society, like we ought to have more people who are taking care of social welfare, we ought to have people who are doing more of this. We're actually mismatched in terms of our vision because we exist arguably to fill the needs of industry. Now, universities can have social responsibilities to go and change what corporations do. I don't know. I wish you well on that. But when you get really laser focused and you want success, you want your graduates to be prepared to get jobs that can take care of them and their family. And a lot of these degrees, the customers don't want them, or there aren't as many customers who want them. So that's a sort of a separate issue that's kind of spicy.
I know we ask these questions both in the HRD program and in social policy among the social workers, one being corporate driven and one being mission driven. The
Yeah,
fact remains that there is a dearth in both areas. So I suppose you are right that we
yeah,
have
yeah.
to look at the new workplace to see what they actually do need. Or
Right. Now you talk about corporate driven and mission driven. And the question is, should there be any difference? Because the question becomes, what is the mission of a university? Now, if the mission of a university is to get the entire economy so balanced and so poised that people of all different types and intellects and interests and so forth should find employment and that the distribution of wealth be equitable and even egalitarian, I hate to say it, then that's a completely different mission from one that says we want to take the students who come in and equip them so that they can be contributors to the business and get their jobs and take care of their families. So if the mission does not coincide with getting them jobs and so forth, then I understand. But are they really different?
Good question. I suppose I need to
So
think
anyway,
about that. No.
right,
I mean, as I said, I recognize that that should be part of our mission, getting them
right,
jobs, but I think also advancing the society. So, for
right,
example, the university prides itself in creating thinkers.
yes,
So our students are not supposed to be equipped just for today, but they're supposed
yes,
to be able to solve problems far into the future.
right.
Unfortunately, the problem we're not solving right now is to create jobs that are using them. So, as you say, I'm not so sure if we're meeting our own mission,
Yeah.
but
And to be clear, the university can have a role in helping to make the whole system better, not just the ones who get, it's not just about getting jobs, but to the extent that equipping our students to take care of themselves and their families and contribute to society is an important part of your mission. It is to the same extent that we have to be laser focused on it. And if a part of our mission is the broader policy platform of how things are done in the country, we have to do it in such a way where economic value is assigned to it. Because altruism does not generate wealth. It does not generate anything other than a momentary feeling. So the rest of our mission that doesn't have anything to do with getting people jobs and getting them started well in business, in order for it to succeed, demands that the university have the skill of assigning value to it. So there's a supply and a demand for it. And that's the thing with which many entities have grappled. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So anyway, so go ahead.
And we've strayed a little bit because,
Yeah.
of course, in everything I ask you, what is HR's role
Right.
in fixing this problem that we see looming on the horizon, and how are they going to do it?
Yes. So yes, we did stray, and tangents are important because they give body to the conversation. So, we can think about it critically. But coming back then to this idea of the recruiting challenge and what's somebody's predicting to be impending on in 2030, companies, in terms of their responsibilities, are going to survive and companies are going to die. Some companies are going to do well and extract employees that other companies want. We're not going to have an overflowing pool of talent anytime soon. And so we can't solve the problem right away of saying, how do we get 100% of what we want in terms of the number of recruits available? No, there's a finite number that is less than 100, and the companies that do it right are going to get their fair share and more, and the ones who don't will not. The ones that don't will not. I'll give you a caricature. There's a young man who's brilliant. He goes to school, he studies IT, and he understands things that we have never even conceived to think about. And he gets a job at this wonderful company and he's proud of it. And they put him in a cubicle and hide him away from the sun and pile him up with computers and data. And he's an analyst and he grows to be a manager of analysts. And all he does is just cranks away at numbers and bits and bytes and so forth. But in the meantime, his brilliant mind is dying for exposure. And when he does his job right, he sends information to the managers in the sales organization who go to the conferences, who fly to Miami to talk about best practices, and he doesn't get a chance to do that. And his brain is dying. What he wants is he wants to see the sun. What he wants is he wants credit for his part in the big picture. What he wants is when you ask him to do something, he understands how that something is furthering the bigger mission of the overall company. So he has the sense of purpose. What he wants is to have multidisciplinary exposure to what the company does, because he doesn't want to be just IT. He may be interested in production. He may be interested in operations. And so what the company has to do is to recraft what we call a job so it is not as hardwired to a particular discipline with solid walls between disciplines. We have to break the silos, not just for the synergy of the company's benefit, but for the inspiration and the feeding and the nurturing of the people who are dying in a monofunctional organization. This is a critical thing that companies must do, and many of them don't even know they need to do this for this reason. Until they do, they're going to be on the short end of this talent competition.
What must a learning officer do, like the chief learning officer? Because you've spoken earlier about us redefining jobs, redefining the organization, redefining work, redefining the workplace. So with all of that, what must HR do for the future? Actual things.
Yes.
The article says robots aren't going to take over, but we have spoken about AI. You and I have had discussions about AI. So what is the future looking like based on what you've seen in your consultancy?
Well, the future is a complex set of variables that have to do with AI offloading much of the work, taking off much of the work for which we needed humans in the past. It's going to be the generational divide of getting worse, where people decide, the heck with this industrial age entity called a job, and the growth of the gig economy. You ask a child today, what do you want to be when you grow up? You will get answers that never existed when we were children. I want to be a YouTuber, right? And I'm coming back to the HR thing now. I want to be a YouTuber. Oh, by the way, that sounds like a second-class citizen because you have not developed your academic prowess and you're not living up to your potential. Oh, by the way, While you're graduating students to go sit at a desk and hide away and do analysis, I am going to fly to Europe, to Asia. I'm going to go to Australia with my phone, with very little equipment, and I'm going to talk to people, and I'm going to make $100,000 a month, US. And your people will not make that in a year. So the gig economy is taking on a specter that the jobs need to look at, okay? Remember now, money follows value. And if they're adding value called entertainment and information, the money is going there. Tyler Perry was about to build an $800 million studio in Atlanta. This week, he decided when he saw a product called Soria or some video AI product, some product that creates a video from a set of text inputs, that he was not going to spend the $800 million because he can have AI do much of what he needs. That's $800 million worth of jobs that people would do, infrastructure work and acting work and so forth. So it is coming fast and furious what AI does. AI is able to generate videos that you cannot look at them sometimes and tell that they were not real people and real animals. So my point is, it's a complex mix of all of these things, the gig economy, the AI, and so forth. So what does HR have to do? What HR has to do has to be done from the top. HR has to get a seat at the table. When the CEO and the senior vice presidents are meeting, the head of HR needs to be a legitimate member at the head of that table who can influence the direction that they're taking for the future. And right now, I don't think that HR is there. Then HR may be in the room, but it has not yet bought and owned the credibility of understanding and helping to drive the business. When the top of the HR pile is in the room and representing, it can have an influence to get management to allocate resources to shifting the definition of the job. The poor HR person who is at the entry level or in middle management is capped by what resources are given coming out of the boardroom where the CEO and the senior execs are. So perhaps HR can reach out to its constituents in industry and implore them with the need and the tactics and so forth to make a difference. And in order for them to make a difference, by the way, it's not going to be because people are nice. It's going to be because HR shows the correlation between these things that HR wants and dollars and cents flowing into the organization. I mean, it's literally that. Until a for-profit company sees that an initiative, short-term or long-term, is going to add it to the bottom line, that for-profit company is going to show nominal acknowledgement at best. So HR has to figure out how to bridge the gap. And you know, we're kind of idealistic people. We want to take care of human beings. We make sure everybody's well. And I feel that way as well. But in order for us to take care of our people about whom we care so much, we have to influence the profit machines that give them money to take care of their rent and their mortgage and their phone and their baby's milk. So it's sometimes we think, oh, the world is too profit driven and it's too commercialized and so forth. But it is the commercial side of life that gives us the comfort, the creature comforts that we want our people to have, to feel like they're good providers and show that they love their children. So HR has to figure that out.
I was thinking, though, that HR can do something tangible by forming alliances with the other people. You say being a legitimate part of that C-suite. HR can form alliances with research and development, with marketing, with finance, because I was reading about immersive learning using virtual reality to train. It will cut down, it will make it more efficient. You can see your ROI looking better. You can cut expenses, cut the cost of training people, and in fact train them in things that they need to do for the future. So I was thinking that that might be something that HR could do. Form alliances and begin to speak the language of the other people.
Yes, I have said this to my clients time and again, and in large, successful, otherwise successful organizations, HR really needs to build its credibility within these walls where the C-suite meets, because they're sometimes regarded, HR is sometimes regarded as, the people we send the problems to, the people who take care of the policies, and they work through the compensation thing. In fact, I read an article years ago that was negative on this issue, indicating that companies really don't care about people. For-profit companies don't really care about people. And HR is not there to take care of the people. HR is there to keep the people quiet so that the company can do what it wants with little resistance. Now, this is not me speaking, and I wish I could tell you where the article came from. But there is this perception that HR is there for the CEO and the senior executives to know that the people are being kept quiet so we can pursue our mission. And the people who feel disenfranchised because they think HR is representing senior management only, they don't do what is expected and they make HR feel like a failure. So in order to change that, HR has to become a legitimate member of at the table of the boardroom. And that's a job that requires you planting it in the young ones and appealing to the ones who are at the top of the organizations right now. Do they have the skills to do it? I don't know.
I don't know. What I'm thinking is that whether we want to acknowledge it or not, HR actually represents the company. It's supposed to represent the employees as well. But
Yes.
remember, who pays the people in HR is the company. It's not the other employees.
Yes.
And they are really fellow employees like you. So
Yeah. This is true. This is true. And probably unfortunately true. What we're talking about here is shortage of resources, of talent and ability to get to talent. Yes. So there's a perception that, yeah, look, HR, we're employees too, and we're representing management, like you're here to serve management. But if the body of the organization perceives that HR is here to take care of the people who hired them, as opposed to be advocates and fighters for the cause, then it's going to cause this staff engagement, this employee engagement to go down, which is going to cause people to look elsewhere, which will cause people to stay home and quit until they figure out how to go make money with YouTube. So yeah.
No. HR does advocate, but as you've been saying, it's not altruistic. We're here to serve external customers,
Right.
So as you say, there comes a time when there's a bottom line that you have to understand that HR is there to help fill the mission of the company. It's not
That's
there
correct.
to make you feel good about going to work, though that is part of what they do. But ultimately, we're not on holiday when we go to work.
That's
We
correct.
produce
That's
something.
correct. And the only thing, while I agree with you, the only thing to which I'm alluding here is there's a sentiment I feel inside corporations where in the bowels of the organization, lower level, middle level, people feel like they have no recourse. They have problems with their boss, their manager, and that's the number one influencer in staff engagement. And they can't go to the manager. And when they go to HR, they don't feel represented. So they have nowhere to turn. So they have this frustration inside, which manifests in negativity and grievances and low productivity. So while what you say is true, and I do agree with it, there is that delicate poise where the advocacy and that we believe in you thing needs to be more credible with the people so that at least they feel they have a recourse. The truth of the matter is HR is overworked in most of my clients, and they can't even get to the people because they themselves have their issues that are not being dealt with.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so
Next month, you and I are going to talk about employee engagement.
yes, ma'am. That's a hot topic. Yeah,
Yeah. All
very
right.
good.
So thank you. We'll see you sooner rather than later.
All right, sounds great. Have a great day.
You too.